Most men have no idea what truly melts an older woman's heart, but once you understand Teches, everything changes. Don't skip a second of this video. Every word could shift how women see you forever. Watch till the end. It's time to become that man. Comment below where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful insights from Jessica at Opare. You see, confidence isn't about walking into a room and demanding attention. It's about walking in and not needing it. Real confidence, the kind that older women secretly admire, has nothing to do with loudness or dominance. It's the quiet assurance of a man who knows himself, his strengths, his flaws, and his direction in life. There's something deeply magnetic about a man who is grounded, who doesn't waver with every opinion or trend. Older women sense that energy immediately. It communicates emotional stability, self-respect, and maturity, qualities that can't be faked or bought. When a man carries himself with that calm certainty, he doesn't need to chase validation because his worth isn't dependent on who notices him. And that's exactly why people, especially women with life experience, notice him even more. There's a quiet power and restraint in not trying too hard to prove something. It shows discipline and self-awareness. You see, when a man is sure of himself, he listens differently, he speaks differently, and even the way he occupies space is intentional. He doesn't fill silence with empty words. He's comfortable with pauses because he knows his value doesn't require performance. Now, here's what makes that kind of confidence so irresistible to older women. They've been around long enough to recognize the difference between ego and self-assurance. They can tell when a man's confidence comes from genuine self-acceptance rather than insecurity disguised as bravado. And that difference is everything. A man who's secure doesn't need to control or impress. Instead, he invites connection through authenticity. That's what creates real emotional chemistry. Older women crave that energy because it feels safe, stable, and deeply masculine, not in a physical sense, but in presence. This balance between confidence and humility is rare. Too often, men mistake arrogance for strength, thinking dominance equals attraction. But in truth, what draws a woman in is not the volume of your voice, it's the weight of your silence, the clarity of your purpose, and the steadiness of your mind. Confidence is not saying, "I'm better than others." It's saying, "I know who I am." And that's enough. That kind of man doesn't shrink himself to please anyone, nor does he inflate his ego to feel powerful. He simply is, and that beingness commands respect without a single demand. When a man reaches that level of emotional and psychological maturity, he becomes magnetic in ways even he can't fully understand. His energy changes the room before his words do. He makes people feel grounded, understood, and curious about his depth. And that quiet command of self is what older women secretly love. So if you want to stand out, don't try to be louder, become clearer. Don't chase attention, cultivate presence. Because when a man knows himself, the world, including her, can't help but notice. Emotional intelligence is one of those qualities that can't be faked, and yet it's the very thing that separates men who connect deeply from those who merely impress on the surface. Older women, in particular, are drawn to men who know how to handle emotions, not because they're sentimental, but because they understand that emotional control is power. A man who can stay centered when life gets messy, who can communicate calmly when tension rises, becomes an anchor in a world full of noise. That presence, that steadiness, speaks louder than any charm or good looks ever could. What makes emotional intelligence so attractive is that it signals awareness. An understanding that relationships aren't built on perfection, but on perception. A man who is emotionally intelligent doesn't run from discomfort, he explores it. He knows how to listen without judgment, how to respond instead of react, and how to turn conflict into understanding. That level of maturity tells a woman that she's safe, not just physically, but emotionally. And safety, for an older woman who's seen the ups and downs of relationships, is one of the highest forms of attraction. It's fascinating because emotional intelligence isn't about being overly sensitive or soft. It's about strength with grace, the kind that comes from mastering your inner world. Most people live in reaction. They speak before they think, they feel before they process, and they blame before they reflect. But an emotionally intelligent man has learned the art of pause. He gives space between feeling and action, and in that space he gains control over himself. That's where true confidence is born, not in dominance, but in discipline. Older women recognize and respect this instantly. They can sense emotional balance the way you can sense composure in a storm. When a man can articulate his feelings, admit when he's wrong, or simply holds space for someone else's pain without trying to fix it. That's emotional mastery. It creates connection on a level that transcends attraction. It builds trust. And trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. This kind of man doesn't hide behind silence or pride. He communicates not to win arguments, but to understand and to grow. His vulnerability doesn't make him weak, it makes him real. And in a world that glorifies appearance over substance, realness becomes rare and irresistible. You see, older women don't want perfection. They want presence. They want someone who has lived, learned, and evolved. Someone who knows that love is not about control, but about collaboration. When a man leads with emotional intelligence, he changes the tone of every room he enters. He becomes the calm amidst chaos, the clarity within confusion. And that is a kind of power that no amount of status or wealth can imitate. So remember, this mastering emotions isn't just about understanding others, it's about mastering yourself. Because the moment you can command your inner world, you automatically begin to attract everything and everyone meant for you. Purpose. It's the invisible current that drives a man forward. Even when no one's watching, older women are instinctively drawn to men who live with direction, men who wake up with intention, who know where they're headed, and who don't need external validation to keep going. Purpose isn't about having it all figured out. It's about movement, about progress, about having a why that fuels your how. That kind of man radiates something different, a quiet certainty that his life has meaning, that he's building something bigger than himself. And that energy is deeply magnetic. What makes purpose so compelling is that it reveals a man's relationship with himself. A man without purpose is easily swayed by the opinions of others, constantly shifting between what looks right and what feels right. But a man who's aligned with his vision moves with clarity. His choices are deliberate. His boundaries are firm. He doesn't waste energy proving his worth because his mission already gives him worth. Older women sense this instantly. They've lived long enough to know that passion fades when it's not rooted in purpose, and that a man who drifts without direction eventually loses his fire. There's something almost philosophical about this. Purpose gives meaning to struggle, dignity to discipline, and beauty to sacrifice. It's not just about ambition or success, it's about the emotional and spiritual fulfillment that comes from knowing your life matters. A man who's found that doesn't need to chase excitement because he is the excitement. His enthusiasm for life becomes contagious. His goals, his dreams, his drive, they draw people in, not because he's loud, but because he's alive. And that aliveness makes him irresistible to a woman who's learned to value depth over distraction. But here's the truth. Purpose requires solitude. It demands reflection, honesty, and sometimes loneliness. It's forged in silence when the world isn't clapping for you. That's why so few men cultivate it. They're afraid to face themselves, to confront their own potential and pain. But those who do, who take that journey inward and commit to something meaningful, come out changed. They move differently. They speak differently. They attract differently, because when you're led by purpose, you stop seeking approval and start embodying conviction. Older women find that kind of man profoundly attractive because he represents stability and growth at the same time. He's not stagnant, but he's not reckless either. He's driven, yet calm, focused, yet free. And that balance makes him both inspiring and safe. A man with purpose doesn't just talk about what he'll do, he lives it. His actions are consistent, his standards are high, and his presence becomes a force of motivation to those around him. So if you want to stand out, stop chasing attention and start chasing your calling. Stop asking, what do women want? And start asking, what do I stand for? Because when your life burns with meaning, you don't have to convince anyone of your value. Your purpose speaks it for you.